You did everything right. The space was prepared. The intention was clear. You committed fully. And then it was over. And something in you was gone. Not the ritual. The ritual was complete. But you were thinner afterward than you were before. Most practitioners call that the cost of serious work. Some treat it as proof that something real happened. It is usually neither. If ceremonial magic keeps leaving you mentally thin instead of inwardly gathered, the hidden problem is probably not what went wrong in the room. It is what was leaking in the mind, from the beginning to the end. By the end of this video, one thing will be clearer: where force actually goes when an operation leaks, and why intensity is not the same thing as direction. When the work feels costly, most people look outward first. Bad atmosphere, wrong timing, a missed step, an interruption. And sometimes those things matter. But the operations that drain you most are often the ones that looked perfect from the outside, because the real break does not happen in the room. It happens in the mind. The moment attention stops moving like a current and starts behaving like scattered light. Consider what actually holds a ceremonial operation together. Not the words, not the objects, not the arrangement. Those give it form. But form and force are not the same thing. An operation is held together by directed inner movement. When that movement is leaking, quietly, continuously, the rite continues in form while collapsing in force. Here is what most people miss. Attention is not the support system for an operation. Attention is the operation. The tools are vehicles. The words are structure. The space is a container. But it is directed attention that makes anything move. And the mind trained by modern life does not naturally hold one direction. Part of it runs ahead to check for results. Part of it steps back and watches itself perform. Part of it admits small side currents, an old fear, a private doubt, a reaction to silence. None of those departures has to be dramatic to cost you. They only have to keep opening exits. And when force has 10 exits, it comes out thin. A vessel can be perfectly shaped and still hold nothing if there is a crack running through it. That is what scattered attention is. Now here is where most practitioners reach the wrong conclusion. They feel the depletion, and they think more effort, more pressure, more intensity. But pressure does not seal a crack. It can widen it, because now you are not simply divided. You are divided under compulsion. What exhausts you is not the weight of the work. It is the number of directions you are feeding at once, or calling it one act. That distinction matters, because exhaustion after an operation is not evidence that something powerful happened. It may be evidence that something scattered did. So let the question change. After any operation, do not ask, how intense did it feel? Ask, how much of me stayed in one line from beginning to end? That is not a harder standard. It is a more honest one. And it changes what you are doing before the work even begins. Not forcing concentration into place. Not blocking every thought, but recognizing that every time attention leaves the act, force leaves with it. When that becomes the practice, the recovery is not heroic. You notice the departure. You return. You do not punish yourself for leaving. You simply come back. And something in the work begins to change. Not because you became more disciplined, but because you stopped treating scattered attention as a minor inconvenience and started seeing it for what it is, the primary variable, the one that determines whether an operation gathers or disperses. And with that clarity, even simple work becomes different, because what was leaking begins to hold, what was dispersing begins to gather, and what used to thin you out begins, little by little, to return you to yourself.